Today, we are talking about misconceptions. How do others see us? Do we have an obligation to people we meet and to ourselves in regards to this misconception?
One time somebody called me in the church a bully, and they said it jokingly, and it was in the context of me getting people involved in doing things, and you're just kind of a bully. And I had to step back and go, uh-huh.
But as Christians, maybe we can start seeing ourselves as God sees us, the perfect lens that allows us to be free from our sin and the misconceptions of others.
Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations.
All this and more on Faith on Tap. We are here again at Kingsman Brewing Company in Southington, Connecticut, or Milldale, as Dennis refers to as a poor section of town.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, this is
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
The atmosphere. No. This place is
I don't
gorgeous.
know how breweries are where you're listening to this, but most of the breweries are in Connecticut are old factories, and they refurbish them. They look really nice, and this is different. Looks like it's not brand new, but it makes it look brand new. It's very nice looking.
It's big and open, and it's just lovely. Beautiful here.
And their beer selection. That doesn't disappoint for IPA people anyways.
No.
They have 35 IPAs, like one sour and one real beer.
And no cider. I was hoping for a cider.
No. Dennis, who yearns to be a millennial, wants to order IPAs all the time. What millennial IPA did you have?
You know, it's not a want. It's more of a passion of mine to be able to connect Jesus with the younger generation.
Millennials aren't that young anymore.
They're younger than I am. But anyway, I have enjoyed a hazy double IPA tonight. It's called Yep, Nope. Tried it because it's got the correct ABV for me, which is required for my taste. It's got a cool name. Yep, Nope.
And Liz, again, we're sharing. We don't always drink the same thing, but usually
I would have gotten a cider had they had one.
The thing is, when you go to these places, if they have one stout or porter, we're shocked.
Yeah.
And Liz and I both like porters.
Prefer
and stouts,
one over regular beer, yeah. Dinosauria. It's good.
It's an imperial stout. It's good. It's rather high IBV. It's like 10%.
And you're going to try to tell me that the two of you who have ancient fossils in your house did not order this beer based on the name.
Absolutely not.
100%.
Come on.
If there was an IPA called that, I would have quickly moved away from that. 100%.
And I would have been mad.
I could care less about the name. I look at what it's made of.
But yes, the name is awesome, but it has no bearing on whether we got it or not.
Anywho, we're going to be asking the question, is there a misconception that they have about you? And I know once I said that, you're thinking about yourself and you're thinking, you know what, people always think that blah, 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 blah. Because we all do that. And
especially people who are introverted, because we keep a lot of stuff to ourselves. And so it actually it fosters a lot of that.
And also, because of being an introvert, you are classified as certain things because of that as well.
Yes, you are immediately slotted.
Yeah, and probably deservedly so. Because
I know. And that is one thing for 2025 that I am trying to address.
So, yeah, I think I'm kind of looking forward to this question. They might not want to get too personal. That might be the only thing they might not want to answer it. If they do, I think we can have some fun with it and see if we can eventually get a spiritual end of that as well. Well, let's have some fun. Let's see what they have to say.
For sure.
Josh, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about you?
Just recently got into my career, so...
What's your career?
I do HVAC.
Oh, excellent. Did you go to technical school for that and then kind of launch into it?
Trade school at Porter and Chester in Waterbury.
Very cool. Yeah. Good for you, man.
Yeah,
Good.
It was...
You know, the unsung millionaires in our society are the trades.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. But I would say the biggest misconception is that I can be like friendly. I don't know.
Dude, if I was going to walk up to a table and hug anyone, it would have been you first.
I get a lot of people that tell me, they always tell me that it can be hard to like walk up to me sometimes because...
What do you think that is?
They say I have like a serious face or I have like a very serious demeanor, but...
In that context, have you ever questioned yourself? Like, do I have a resting bitch face? Or,
Yeah.
and like, what is it?
No, trust me, I do question myself all the time, and I'm like, I don't purposely do it. It's just I don't know. It's just like it's just a face that I put on, and I'm just always just that way. I don't know.
Are you suspicious naturally of people? Like, are you looking like what their in is, or like?
I'm always keeping my eye out. I'm keeping my instincts intact and looking around my surroundings and always stuff like that. But I would say I do question a lot of things.
Well, that's a huge misconception just from meeting you for the last like 20 minutes. So
that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm misunderstood a bit.
Yep.
But also, like I said, I stay low, try to stick to myself a bit.
Stay quiet. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are here back at Kingsman, of course, and we are talking with Rachel and Mel. Okay, so again, they're at this amazing girl party. What do you have in your glass?
I have the Buzz Lightyear.
Okay, I saw that up there. And what do you have the same?
I have a 21.3, a little IPA. This is a light one.
It sounds intense. It seems like that's the perfect kind of thing to have with pretzel and pizza.
Oh, absolutely.
It just smells so good. I may never leave. Everything is amazing. Okay, so I have a question for you. Rachel, we'll start with you. What's the biggest misconception that people have about you?
This one, a lot of people look at me and my face is very like intimidating, I guess. Like I've heard a lot of people after getting to know them, they're like, yeah, I didn't think I was going to like you meeting you. Or like, yeah, I thought like, excuse my language, but every person has been, yeah, I thought you were a total bitch when I met you. Just because of I look so mean. And then they're like, but then you started talking and you're like, actually pretty nice. And I'm like, yeah, I promise I'm not rude, but
That's
I was like, I know.
fascinating.
I was like, this is the one and only thing this is the one question I can't answer.
Okay, and you mentioned the last time that we talked that you actually work in children's church.
Yes.
So are the children terrified when you walk in?
No, it's more with like adults.
It's
like
more
it's
with
more like
adults.
that's why I do work with kids outside at work too, and that's why I work with so many kids. It's
Okay.
like you're so young. What are you gonna do to judge me? Okay, like what are you gonna?
But
do?
you do look older than 21.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Question mark. I don't know.
You have an air of maturity about you.
Okay,
let's
you.
call it that. You don't act like a typical 21-year-old. You act like
That's-
someone with
yeah.
a little bit more under her belt. Not
Appreciate that.
And I'm not going to say anything because you're terrifying me. Have you ever felt misunderstood in a way that it made you question what you're doing?
I guess because I'm not that type. I never want people to think of me that way. I'm always looking, build relationships, and like get to know you. I'm always willing to dive deep and to know that people look at me and are like, oh, unapproachable. I'm like, oh, that's my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just like walk around stores and I'll just like randomly smile. I'll be like, oh, your face. And I'm just like aware of it. Telling you, it's been mentioned too many times.
What's the deeper truth about you that people should know?
I think I'm just in my own head a lot and spacing out in my own world, just like thinking, and my face apparently is just phase. It's definitely resting.
Okay, so now we will ask Mel. So what is the biggest misconception people have about you?
I kind of was trying to think of one she was answering, and the only thing that I could come up in my head is that people don't realize, this sounds so selfish, but like I have to be honest with myself, people don't realize that I'm smart. Everybody else in my life tells it to me, so I feel like I have to admit it. But
Where
it's
do you
just-
think this misconception is coming from?
I have what people call a switch. So I could sit here and have a normal conversation and sound very like normal per switch.
Yeah.
Where I can turn on and be very professional and very vocal and have correct terminology and all these things. I do very well in school, but I have almost like a switch in my brain that could turn that on and off. So when I'm talking normal day or to anybody, and then I talk about school or I talk about grades or my work or anything, and the switch turns on, people are like, wait, what? Wait, I don't understand. Like, you're actually smart? Like, I guess.
When they get that realization, how does that make you feel?
Indifferent, I guess. Because at one hand, like, I appreciate that I'm not just school smart. I can hold a steady conversation with somebody and be intelligent when I want to be. And then I can also be normal and not like, oh, this person.
Because you're super cute.
Oh, thank you.
And people often equate being adorable with not having any
True.
brain muscle working on.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you could be a little uglier,
You know what? I'll try.
yeah,
I'll
just
think about that next year.
yeah, give that a go. I've been working on it for years. What is even more than how capable you really are? Is there an even deeper truth about you that you wish people would tap into once in a while?
Kind of. There's a part of me that wishes that people would look deeper than just my accomplishments. I feel like the reason that I get upset when people don't realize that I'm smart is because that is an accomplishment to me. And if you negate that, then like I feel like, what am I?
And even when they know you're smart, then they just like, that's their little hopping off spot.
Absolutely.
You're still two-dimensional in that
Yeah.
way. Don't we all want to be like three-dimensional? One person said to me once, what we want more than anything is to be known.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think when people do this cursory surface evaluation, oh, she's smart. She knows.
Yeah.
She's so book smart. She knows all these things. Or she has resting face, or whatever it is. She's so mean. Whatever bad, however they want to determine it. It just feels like, oh, they've made zero effort to get to know who I am. And, when you guys are in your 20s and you have a lot of time to make some inroads for this. So
Absolutely.
that's pretty exciting.
What's a misconception often that people have about you?
Oh man, I've had a nickel for every time someone said, man, I thought you were a big old asshole, Never mean to give off those vibes, but I've had so many people come up through conversations being like, this is not the first impression that I had of you. I thought you were, come across as a jerk or being very curt, being very...
Does that surprise you when people say that?
Yes and no. Yes, at times, because I actually think I am a kind, friendly person. But other times, I think when I'm in certain situations, public settings, situations where I'm with people that I don't necessarily know, I think I tend to put on a little bit of armor. And I think part of that external armor that I'm putting off, people might confuse that as I'm being protective. They picture it as I'm being standoffish. And
what are you protecting?
Me.
What part of you?
All the parts, I guess, but emotional security.
I know that you're a military background and you're a police officer now.
Yes.
Your past and your current positions and occupations, is that part of who you are when people think you're a certain way or not? Do you think that rubs off that way?
Possibly. I mean, I have definitely heard it in those realms. I have heard it, and maybe it is for better or for worse. I mean, there are times when you're trying to break in a platoon of soldiers that maybe you want a little bit of that aura for, I hate saying that term, good order and discipline and team cohesion. There's a nice effectiveness with it, kind of play into it. But I think the negative is when it comes to your personal relationships, whether it be in society or in the workplace, it kind of gets strained. And I wonder if I don't realize I'm putting up some of those pieces of armor, some walls, so that I don't have to feel a stab in the back or a heartbreak down the road again.
Sure. It took a long time. I don't think I've ever been able to separate. There's a certain demeanor in front of students. And then I go home to my family who are like the same age. My kids are the same age as my students. Yeah. And I have to be different. Like if a student went to hug me, I have to be, no, that's statue. I cannot show any affection toward you. And I go home and it's like, I don't want to be that way. So I understand in your life as a military person, as a police officer, there's a certain decorum that you have to have. You go home.
You gotta switch gears.
Am I getting in where you're coming in? Is that similar?
Very much so. Now, I talked about how it works well in the military realm of, training and chain of command. So it's very similar in the law enforcement for me in my younger years. In my later years now, I'm almost 20 years into my law enforcement career, there's a whole lot less of me putting on that police character. Yeah. And a lot now, you see Sam in my police uniform interacting with the public. Obviously, if a scene goes south, then we're going to deal with that. But when I'm interacting with the public, it's just me now. I find that it's so much more effective.
Interesting.
Because I'm not playing the role. I'm just being Sam.
Okay.
Officer Sam. Hey, man, we're going to, end of the day, okay, you stole this thing. You punched this person. You shot this deer. Okay, I get it. Things happen. You're going to have to take responsibility and move on. It is what it is. I'm not going to judge you for it. Yeah. We're going to do some paperwork, give you a court date, and that's it.
And most of the time, people respond positively to that?
I have not had an issue in the last 15 years.
Oh, wow. That's excellent.
I'm trying to think. The last time I actually had to put hands on was 2013.
Oh, wow. You actually remember the year.
Yes. It was my first shift back from Afghanistan.
Oh boy.
And it went south about 10 minutes into the shift.
With your experience now, would have ended the same way?
With that situation, no.
Okay.
No. I don't see any other way that situation would have handled.
So it's just coincidence that you're right from the military and you went right into that.
Yes, I
Okay.
never even got a
If
chance
that
to snap
happened,
out of it.
if that happened tomorrow, you'd have to do the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the misconceptions that people have on you, the reasons you mentioned, is there someone in your life, like your wife, Nicole, does she understand you fully?
I think she sees through that, and I love that. I love that she sees the authentic, genuine, loving person that I am, and that allows me to just shed that armor off. I think the beautiful part of that relationship is when I'm with her, she can shed her armor and just be her truest, authentic self as well. It makes her a phenomenal relationship.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Now, let's go one step further than that. We're talking about how people have misconceptions of who you are, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you have some belief in a higher power. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Whatever that higher power is in your life, does that higher power accept you for who you are?
I come to a realization with.
How's that?
Still working on that.
Okay. That's fair, but it's a positive thing.
Very, very positive.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Sam. And good day, everyone. Good day, Liz.
Good day, Mark.
Good day, disciple of doctrine. Good day, disciple of doctrine.
Okay. Okay.
I love that one.
Okay. Feels a little bit dry, but I'll take it because I'm a disciple of doctrine.
It's very polish.
It is.
You're
It
saying
is.
doctrine is dry?
Yes. I mean,
So
if you think about it. Yeah.
To me, it's like
scripture is
it's
dry.
right out of the book of Romans. It just seemed very polished.
Scripture is dry. Jesus' life on earth and his sacrifice is dry to you?
Wow.
No.
Well, that's what doctrine's about.
Doctrine is a man-made
Based
assumption based on their interpretation of Scripture.
So the doctrine of your church, is that dry?
When you
Hello?
come
Is
when
there
you
any
come
here?
down when you come down to read it, yeah, absolutely, it's dry.
When I visit a church, I look at the church doctrine because
should.
I don't consider it dry. I think that God's words breathed life through human words.
But you're different.
I've been called that. We're asking people, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about you? All our podcast listeners, they just want to know, what is our biggest misconception? I mean, they've been on the edge of the seat as soon as they saw the title. What is the disciple of doctrine's biggest misconception people have about you?
That I'm actually a disciple of doctrine.
Very good.
Biggest misconception, the biggest, oh my gosh, moments that I have is when I tell people I'm a pastor. After some dialogue, after some interaction, and that is, you're a what?
Do you wear that as a badge of honor when people say that?
I do. Yeah.
I think you cultivate it a little bit. Yeah, so it's more of a deception than a misconception.
May I share a quick story? I was upgraded to poor man's first class on a trip from the Czech Republic to JFK. I sat next to this young woman who was a Christian, and I was devil's advocate for about 6 hours of her life. Nitpicking, she was a Christian. She's telling me, well, I believe the Bible. I said, well, I believe the Constitution was written by men, but I don't believe it was from God. And I just kind of poked and prodded at her, picked apart her Christianity.
Were you having a bad day?
Oh my heavens.
No, I, as Liz said, I cultivate this mystique. After a while, finally, she was so frustrated with me. She said, well, what do you do for a living? And I looked at her and smiled. I said, I'm a pastor. And I knew it. You knew all the right questions to ask. You knew. And I do cultivate that because.
So that very day she lost her salvation because of you?
No, she actually deepened it. I told her she did a great job at contending for the faith.
Oh, dear. Dennis.
So did you answer the question? What's the biggest misconception people have?
That I'm a pastor.
That's your title. That's not who you are.
That's what I do.
As Kierkegaard once said, when you strip away all the things that are about you, what you do for a living, your color of your hair or lack thereof, in our case, et cetera, whatever is left is who you are. When you're done talking to someone, some type of relationship, what is a misconception people have about you? They probably think that I am
A bit of a hard ass.
because.
Just the way I look.
Are you?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. Not in the context of a worldly pain in the butt where I'm just there to needle and prod and make your life miserable.
What is your misconception people have about you?
People tend to only know me through one facet. And so they think that's whatever that facet is, that's all they know about me. And they'll pigeonhole me in that one thing. And it can get frustrating.
For example,
Some people only know me for my art. And so they think that's all I do. They don't know, I might have these other facets about me. And so that they just only focus on the one thing. So
is that their fault?
I don't spend a lot of time talking about myself, but if there's been people that have known me for literally decades and they only focus on the one thing, I find that kind of not just annoying, but if they've known me for a real long time, it's insulting.
Do you give yourself time to discuss other parts of who you are to them?
If there's anything that comes up, but again, I don't brag. I just don't. It's not part of my character to go around and say, oh, blah, blah, look at me. I did this great thing. It's just weird that some people, different things that I'm capable of. So you would never. Yeah. So you don't pigeonhole me. But there's a lot of people that have known me for literally decades and still do it.
I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just wondering whether that's because you don't lend yourself out to other aspects of you to others.
I try not to be. It's like what people know me at church for is being on the worship team. But I've done other things. The things I do would sound obnoxious if I went up and said anything. It's like, oh, did you know that blah, 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 blah. No, it's just, I'm not going to do that.
Well, it doesn't have to be that.
I would expect someone that I've only met under very narrow conditions to do that, but not people I've known forever.
For myself, because I have glasses and I'm bald, everyone thinks I'm a nerd. Not saying I'm not.
He is a nerd.
Just gonna, come on.
He's more than a nerd, but he's clearly a nerd.
But that is definitely people see me, and because I have glasses and because I have, I guess, the look, people come up to me out of the blue, and I was wondering what this math equation. Well, it's funny because that happened to my son. He was at Carnegie Mellon for computer science, and it was within the first week. He was crossing the road, and a girl came up to him and he goes, "Do you fix computers?" And he says, "Is it that obvious?" And she goes, "Yeah." It kind of is. I guess that could run the family. And I guess the other thing is because I am an introvert, but people think that I'm aloof, snobby, etc. because I don't talk much. I just don't care to talk much. It's not in my nature. I'd rather ask the questions. As a good introvert, what we do is we ask questions, deeper questions to people. And that way, no one has to ask about me. And usually they don't. If you're an extrovert, you don't care about the other person. You just want to tell them more about yourself anyway. So that's what makes a good podcaster. When going to interviews, you can just delve into it, and they love that. And I don't mind. I was always wondering, do we act differently among different people? I'm asking people in general, ourselves, because I personally, I want to think that I'm the same person, whether it's my family, a friend, as a teacher, etc. But there's different parts of my personality that I'm going to express differently. I'm not changing who I am. If I'm teaching 12-year-old kids, I'm going to present myself differently than I'm teaching college. I'm not changing who I am, but presenting myself differently. Maybe a different part of my personality. I'll be goofy or something with the younger kids. I'll stand on tables and stuff. How about you guys?
Same. I think in different situations, we express different parts of our personality, and they rise or fall to the occasion.
But in no case are you putting a mask on.
I think some would call it a mask, that you're changing who you are, but you're really not. At the core of who you are is who you are, and you have these nuances of who you are.
When you give a sermon, or when I talk to you when we're at a brewery you're the same Dennis. I don't see any mask at all on you.
Yeah, I try not to. But to your point, in certain circumstances, I have to allow parts of my personality to wane and other parts of it to rise to the occasion.
That makes sense.
People don't understand the depth and the intricacy of my sarcasm, and so sometimes I have to tame it.
I think the only time where I might be unrecognizable is if I've hit a brick wall with a person or a group of people, and then I'm like, okay, we're done here, and I just shut down. If I'm not worth your time, you are not worth my time, and we're done here, and I may physically be in here, but I am in no other way in this room with you.
Checked out.
Do you think that people care about these misconceptions? Do I care that people think that I'm aloof? In a Christian sense, I do, because if someone had a pressing spiritual question, I would love for them to talk to me about that. But for example, at church, I'm the sound guy. I stay behind there. I'm like the umpire. No one knows I'm there unless something goes bad. And then if something goes bad, no matter what, even if the pastor doesn't turn the mic on, it's my fault. Everyone looks at me.
Everybody knows you're there.
So, but the point is, I care that some people won't approach me, but I mean, that's my problem. That's a me problem. And I understand that, but it's a role that I decide to take. When I guess I put myself in a role position, and this is my role, and I will act this way in this position. I don't care generally because I know what people think about me most of the time, and I know all the negatives and maybe a couple positives. And I'm old enough; it's like I'm not going to change. That's who I am. And if you're not liking it, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to really change for you. And we probably won't be great friends, and that's okay. I can still love you in Christ.
Amen.
And as a pastor, you must care how people...
There was a time where I used to care quite a bit, and you learn as a pastor that if you put a ton of weight into what people think about you or think about that sermon, or you will drive yourself crazy. And so I have learned that there are certain people in my life that I care about what they have to say about me, and I've chosen those people. And
Thank you.
And I've and I've chosen to give them that voice, and other people, the vast majority, just don't listen to. I mean, I hear them. I don't take their offense.
You become more Teflon in your position.
Yes, I've had to grow a thicker skin.
Was that easy to do? Is that their personality?
I'm not sure it's easy for anyone to do, when you care about people and when you care about where they are and they attack you. It's never easy to put that aside and not absorb that. But it is a skill that you learn. It is a spiritual skill too. It's pressing in, knowing who I am in God's eyes, and it's okay that I'm less in yours.
That's a good point. I like that.
I can be very blunt. I've learned that as a pastor, just with that slate on my door, my words carry more weight than I believe they should. And it's just because I carry that pastor before my name. Sure. That's all there is. One time somebody called me in the church a bully, and they said it jokingly, and it was in the context of me getting people involved in doing things. And you're just kind of a bully. And I had to step back and go, And it was my words and my approach. I was the fire hose, and I was just spraying, and you need to do this. In that context, they were right. That wasn't a misconception. I had to check myself and go, I need to change this. I am who I am, soup to nuts, A to Z, and either it's all of me or none of me in the context of relationship and or... The only thing I can think of is I am more quiet in those situations because I'd rather have them think I'm a fool than open my mouth and take away all doubt. Other than that, no, I don't put forth any effort to change and or to highlight a certain aspect of my personality.
In our talkings and dealings with people, I don't think anyone was surprised on what some of the preconceived notions people have that affect. Liz, did you want to talk about your encounter?
Yeah, so Rachel... She's such a sweet girl. She's a young lady. She's not a girl. She said that a lot of people think that she's tough and hard, and that because her face kind of rests in a situation where she doesn't look as pleasant or approachable. And I'm not using the term
RBF or resting Baptist face.
Yes, resting Baptist face. She's an absolutely delightful young lady, but she does get intense because she has a great deal of focus, which is super cool. And nothing I would ever want her to give up. But when people see her in action, they're seeing a young lady who is really focusing and working hard and wants to achieve. And it comes off differently. And she's aware of it. But when you're, Mark, you're a very intense person, I've heard.
People have said that.
Yeah, they may have. When you are in that zone, you don't always have the self-awareness of what your face muscles are doing. So I think it's just like, I find it, because I know Rachel a little bit, I find it kind of charming and not off-putting because I see someone who's working really hard and really focused and is doing the best she can at the moment. I think that's cool.
Know her also. She works with autistic children. And so her facial expressions communicate a great deal. I'm sure that she has to be that stern. And
you have to be very measured, and because
she does have that look.
Yep. And I think it works for her benefit. Yeah, more power to you, babe.
Yep.
And we talked to Sam. And Sam he's a state cop, passed in the military, and his biggest thing that people have a misconception of is that people think he's a jerk. I don't know whether in those occupations you end up present yourself a certain way that ends up flowing out where maybe it shouldn't have, or maybe because of that, you're very rigid in rules because that's your job and you do have that rigidity in that aspect. People can make that assumption. Liz, your sister's husband talked to me about that. He said that I go by and he's not a state cop or anything. And he's at functions. He goes, "Are you a cop?" No. He was kicked out of a concert once. He likes hair bands and stuff like that. And he was almost kicked out of a concert once because everybody thought he was a narc.
Yeah, he kind of carries himself that way.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
he's not that way.
He's not.
Yeah.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah. But I guess it would be, the biggest thing. If you don't find that out until you're old, it's like, oh, really? Everyone thinks that about me? Like, oh, boy.
You know what impressed me with Sam was when he was talking about how very objective he is now. Like back in the day, he was the young cop full of vigor and
vigor, yes.
But he was very objective in describing, listen, you messed up. There's going to be consequences. You got to take responsibility. I'm not going to judge you for it. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that was refreshing to hear a police officer say that.
That's also years of experience
exactly.
and maturity. Yeah.
As he said, he's the old guy on the block now.
Yeah.
So, I also talked to Melanie. I'd never met her before. She's a very nice young lady and very sparkly personality. So she was just adorable. And she says, people don't think that I'm smart. And then she talked about all of her experiences and the stuff that she did know, which was pretty impressive for a young lady. And I told her, honestly, I said, to be fair, a lot of people that are attractive are often considered, they don't have to be smart. That might be one of her issues. She's just kind of cute.
I know it. Yeah.
So Mark's misjudged by that all the time. So I just think that might be part of what plays in because she's just a sweet girl, sweet young lady.
I think when you were interviewing them and talking to her, you were talking about our desire to be known.
Yes.
To be really known. And it brought me back to the show Cheers, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. But just where everybody knows your name and it knows who you are. And that was a really good point that we just want to be known for who we are.
We don't want to be one-note Nelly. We want to be three-dimensional, fleshed out, full orchestration. And not everyone sees that in other people.
I also think that as a Christian perspective, when we are on the receiving side of getting that impression from someone, do you generally make a judgment right off the bat on someone? Do you think that, this person's probably this way? As a pastor, you must have some impressions.
Yeah. First impressions are important and not to necessarily be something that you're not, but to be who you really are. And as a pastor, meeting so many different people, and especially people who seem to have always good intentions, you have to weed through and discern what the real intention is. That just comes with experience, with age, with discernment, with prayer, and with my wife. She will say, this person makes me feel weird. And I've learned through the years, I need to heed that and look into that, not just to go, she's because she can see personality traits that I'm oblivious to as a guy. I've grown to really respect that.
I think that's good in a marriage is see each other's blind spots.
Yeah.
Going back to being known, Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. And that's from Psalms. So that's pretty intimate knowledge. And it's really comforting that even if people walking in this earthly plane with us don't necessarily get us, God knew us before even our molecules were pulled together. He got us completely and loved us unconditionally right there.
Amen.
Yes, I was going to comment on that when you're saying we all want to be known. We are all known. That is reassuring. And I always get scared when some of my prayers are sarcastic. And what if God doesn't understand sarcasm? I'm screwed.
Well, see, that's where the devil comes in, making you believe that your sarcasm is not a spiritual gift.
Right, exactly.
Which
Paul just didn't have enough
paper
to...
Paul was sarcastic.
Yeah, he was.
I wish he would go all the way with the knife. Come on, man.
Yeah, that was awesome. Is that one of your tattoos?
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good way to end the podcast, with the idea that we all have misconceptions of ourselves. We have misconceptions of others. And it's on us to find out a little bit more about the people. People have misconceptions about us. Maybe we should reveal ourselves more. But at the end of the day, it is reassuring to know that God knows all of us inside and out, and probably a lot more than we know about ourselves.
And still loves us.
Yeah, for some reason. Thanks for listening again, everybody. Have a great day. Tune in next episode when you'll hear Dennis say,
It's New Englandy in the sense of being in New England.